Chapter 41, Hope is Brewing, Swamp Poison Frog. You are listening at novelfold.audio. A circle of chubby little cuties was very shy, but they still flew back to the starry sky vines in the north, turned into streamers and merged into them. Then Lear could feel that groups of life energy condensed in the vines. There were 0.34 groups in total. It was amazing. After giving birth to her baby, the vine fairy flew out again soon. It looked like she was much more relaxed. Their faces were flushed, and they were a little embarrassed to look at Lear. Lear smiled. I wanted to let them have a good rest, but these little guys ran away to continue cultivating the starry sky vines, and it can be clearly felt that the speed of the vine fairy mobilizing magic power has increased significantly. These lives are really amazing. In this way, it only takes half a year to have a new vine fairy born. The bubble beast on the other side only needs 2 months. The increase of these two important strategic forces is definitely a major benefit to the city of Wei Lu. The next day, August 12. Lear continued to lead the team out hunting. At the same time, he also arranged for Bane to send some swamp people to look for black dragon broadleaf grass. As swamp creatures, swamp people are no less familiar with swamps than wetland lizardmen, but their combat effectiveness is not as good as these fierce creatures. They also have their own way of survival, avoiding risks, and finding food. These are skills they have learned since childhood and have long been transformed into instincts. Without the protection of wetland lizardmen, there are more risks, but they can still perform tasks. Today, continue to search north. The ruins occupied by the smelly giant monster will not show traces until the 15th. He went to explore the surroundings and eliminate the hidden threats, so that it would be easier to operate at that time. More importantly, the potential of wetland lizardmen can be improved with only the last step. After leaving the city of Microdu, Lear dispersed the 5 teams of wetland lizardmen. It is necessary to find enough hunting targets today. After walking about 5 kilometers, the lizardmen in front of them made a commotion and immediately sent back a message. There was an unexpected discovery. When Lear arrived, he immediately saw a row of 3-toed footprints on the muddy ground in front of him that were several circles larger than the millstone. They were deeply sunk into the mud, more than 1 meter deep. They extended to the grass before disappearing. His face immediately became solemn. He had seen the same 3-toed footprints before, but not in this direction. That unknown mysterious monster has been active in this area. He was alert. This footprint is too big. What kind of life is it? Be alert, that the direction where the other party disappeared was exactly where the smelly giant monster in the north was to be explored. It's just right to go together. The marching speed remained unchanged, but the wetland lizardmen's eyes were full of vigilance. They became more cautious. After walking forward for 10 minutes, a warning came from the front. Lear immediately arrived with the army, but was slightly disappointed that it was not a 3-toed monster. There was a large muddy land ahead, where a group of ugly monsters were rolling in the mud. The gray-brown toad had a very rough body, a white belly, walked upright, had big yellow eyes, and had a huge mouth, croaking. The back was covered with fist-sized pustules, which looked extremely disgusting. The number of them was roughly over 200. Swamp Poison Frog, Level 8, Potential, 2 stars, Racial Talent, Venom Pustules, which contain venom and will cause ranged toxic damage after being broken. Skills, Toxic Long Tongue, 1 star, has an extremely long tongue that can extend 3 meters to attack the enemy. Spraying Venom, 2 stars, can spray venom to attack the enemy, causing corrosive damage. Evaluation, a disgusting monster containing highly toxic venom, 2-star potential, level 8 wild monster. Lear frowned slightly. This is a tough nut to crack. Turned to look at hags beside him. We can't force it. We need to retreat 300 meters and lure these monsters out in batches to hunt them. The swamp poison frog is full of poison, and the pustules on its back can cause splash damage if they are broken. If we force it like a poisonous hedgehog, even if he has a powerful healing technique, there will be huge casualties. Any wetland lizardman warrior is a valuable fighting force at this moment, and must not be lost here. But if we can hunt all these monsters, the promotion of the wetland lizardman warrior is just around the corner. Hags immediately agreed. Gather the army and retreat quietly. Lear didn't let the wetland lizardman stop until they arrived at a relatively dry area. Looking around, there were reeds more than 1 person tall all around. It was so dense that no one could be seen after half a meter into it. in the center was an oval open space with a diameter of 30 meters, very suitable for ambush. Hide on all sides, stay downwind, and don't expose your presence. Hags, go and lure some of the swamp poison frogs over. Don't let them be too many, just 2 teams. If there are too many swamp poison frogs chasing you, take a detour to escape. The level 7 wetland lizardman hero looked solemn. As you wish, but he was not vague at the moment, holding the steel knife tightly and turning away. Lear also hid in the back, opened a gap in the grass, and silently observed under the protection of 2 teams of wetland lizardman warriors. 7 or 8 minutes later, a low roar came from the bushes ahead. Hags is giving a warning. Lear's eyes fixed, and he waved his hand, telling the wetland lizard warrior ahead to pass on the order, get ready. A strange rhythm came out of the wetland lizard's mouth, and then it fell silent. Everyone was quietly waiting for the prey to arrive. In a moment, there was a rustling sound, and the reeds ahead shook. Swished out a burly figure broke through the reeds and appeared in Lear's sight. Hags. This level 7 hero did not linger at all, and quickly rushed into another bush, as if this was just a place where he had no intention of escaping. Swished up the reeds shook violently, and the grass and trees ahead were lifted up. 7 or 8 swamp poison frogs with white bellies, gray-brown wrinkled toad bodies, big mouths, and venomous pustules on their backs excitedly rushed into the open space. There were about the same number of figures following behind. The prey was trapped. Lear's eyes were as sharp as an eagle's in an instant. The swamp poison frog in the front was not aware of the abnormality in its excitement, and it crossed the open space directly and arrived in front of the reeds where Lear was hiding. The swamp poison frog in the front opened its mouth, and its tongue shot out like a sharp sword, extending 3 meters away. It wanted to hunt Haggis. Once hit, it would be severely injured. But at this moment, Lear shouted. Kill! Haggis, who was fleeing in a panic, turned around suddenly, and his blood burst out like a flame. The steel knife reflected the cold light. The swamp poison frog in the front had no time to react, and only saw a flash of knife light, and a terrible pain came from its tongue. A piece of light red tongue flew in the air. The long tongue was cut off directly. The swamp poison frog was about to make a move, and the lizard man who had been fleeing suddenly approached. The steel knife was like lightning, cutting through the sky. The swamp poison frog's vision was spinning, and its head hit the ground hard. In the sight, a headless corpse could be seen standing up. Puffed out a huge frog head shot up into the sky. The blood on the neck exploded like a fountain. Death fireworks. The swamp poison frog in the back was stunned, and just as it reacted, the wetland lizard warriors who were ambushing around were already rushing up with a grin. The level of the swamp poison frog is 2 levels higher than that of the wetland lizard man. The potential is also 1 star higher. But in absolute numbers, fully armed, and under the attack of ambush, these swamp poison frogs watched in horror as the steel knives chopped down. They only had time to swing their claws before they were cut into their flesh and bones by the sharp blades. The moment the tongue in the mouth came out, it would face the sharp blade of the steel knife. Puff puff. The unique sound of cutting flesh and bones resounded around. The shrill roars made people shudder. Swamp poison frogs fell down one by one. Several swamp poison frogs that were not killed immediately opened their mouths and spit out green poison. The poison was like concentrated sulfuric acid splashed on the body, and the skin was directly corroded at the gaps in the armor. The wetland lizard man did not make any painful sounds, but swung his sword more frantically. Cruelty, 1 star. When being hurt or attacking, it will enter a brutal state, becoming extremely brutal, fearless of pain, and fighting the enemy to death. These warriors are immune to pain. After the extreme outbreak, the scene suddenly returned to calm. There was only blood and corpses on the ground. Lear looked at the injured warriors and his eyes moved slightly. The magic power in his body surged, and a magical energy instantly enveloped the warriors covered with poison. The wounds burned by the venom recovered at a speed visible to the naked eye, but the remaining venom was very fierce, and it eroded again after recovery. The powerful healing skill of Swamp Blessing was cast for 5 rounds before it was completely healed. This was when it was splashed a little. If it fights the swamp poison frog head-on, there will definitely be a lot of casualties. After the wetland lizard man recovered, Lear looked at the corpses all over the ground and felt happy. the swamp godhead in his mind slowly operated. A sacred power enveloped the 20 or so corpses, quietly extracting a stream of rich crimson life energy from them. The energy floated in the air and was directly infused into the bodies of the wetland lizardmen around. The wetland lizardman immediately felt that the power in his body had increased a lot, and his eyes were extremely excited. On the panel, its evolution degree increased from 95% to 96%. The life energy contained in the 8th level swamp poison frog is more than 10 times stronger than the Keld Ratman hunted when he first stepped into the swamp. Liar's mouth curled up slightly. If you do this a few more times, you will be able to train a warrior with 2-star potential. Look in the direction of the swamp poison frog. Keep hunting. Chapter 42 promoted to 2 stars, full of rewards. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The second ambush, Lear laid out more calmly. Haggis took up his knife and went away, returned, entered the circle, raided, and hunted. A series of steps killed the swamp poison frog without any chance to fight back. Several waves of ambushes were carried out smoothly, but after the 4th time, the swamp poison frogs saw that their number was almost reduced by half, and suddenly woke up. Their vigilance reached the extreme. No matter how Haggis teased them, they were not tempted again. When Haggis returned to report, Lear fell into deep thought when he saw that the evolution of the wetland lizardmen had reached 99%, only the last wave was left to increase the potential of the wetland lizardmen of these 15 teams to 2 stars. It didn't need the corpses of 2 more teams of swamp poison frogs. Increasing the potential by 1 star would double the combat effectiveness. At this time, the number of the opponent was only over 100. The numerical advantage had been eliminated. His eyes flashed with a dangerous aura and gradually became sharp. Haggis. Master. Concentrate your strengths and hunt down some of the poison frogs in the swamp. I want their bodies. Haggis's eyes immediately became ferocious. As you wish. None of these poison frogs can escape. After running around for a few times, the hero had a strong desire to become stronger. If he could be stronger, the master wouldn't have to be so cautious. After all, they are still not strong enough and need to take into account casualties. 5 fingers clenched into fists. If you don't come out, then I will just flatten you. Wetland lizardmen will never let the master down. Under Lear's will, the army gathered quickly. Not long after, Haggis appeared in front of the poison frogs in the swamp again, roaring in a low voice. He actually rushed towards the poison frogs alone. Seeing this, these swamp monsters were stunned at first, and then furious. So this damn lizardman is just one person. It's okay to provoke them so many times just now, but now he dares to despise them so much. Looking for death. Immediately opened the huge mouth, venom spurted out crazily. The range was more than 30 meters. When Haggis attracted the attention of most of the swamp poison frogs, the grass on the left and right sides was suddenly lifted. Kill! The armored wetland lizardmen warriors with ferocious eyes rushed over like wild wolves. The distance of dozens of meters was crossed in an instant. The swamp poison frogs were startled and hurriedly turned around, spitting venom from their mouths, but at the beginning, they were attracted by Haggis, and at this moment, less than 1/3 of them spit out venom. They were divided on both sides, far from forming intensive killing. Swish. Several wetland lizardmen corroded by the corrosive venom did not say a word, and with ferocious expressions, they accelerated their speed and killed into the swamp poison frogs. Injury for injury, life for life. These swamp creatures are the most fearless warriors. Puff. A wetland lizardman was directly pierced through the abdomen by the tongue of the swamp poison frog, and the solid armor was torn apart. Blood gushed out like a spring, but he still roared and swung the steel knife without changing his face. He chopped down hard and cut off half of the opponent's shoulder. Ah! The swamp poison frog screamed hysterically, and the severe pain directly devoured the soul. Pain is a natural gift of life, and it is necessary to avoid danger, but pain is also the most vulnerable and fatal weakness of life. The pain made the swamp poison frog lose the power and opportunity to fight back. The wetland lizard warrior swung his claws and scratched his neck. The aorta was torn and the blood burst. The body of the swamp poison frog staggered and fell to the ground in the thick blood. The wetland lizard warrior kept walking and roared towards the second target. That crazy posture also infected Lear behind him. This is his warrior, a pure warrior, fighting for him, and facing death for him. No one can trample on you. Magic power was running, and the swamp gifts burst out among the wetland lizardmen. Powerful healing skills were the strongest shield at this moment. Lear was supporting them in the most direct way. Wherever the battle was the most intense, Lear's healing skills would focus on that area, using his greatest ability to ensure that there would be no deaths. Collision and fighting, every blow was to the bone. Under his powerful treatment, dozens of wetland lizardmen warriors were slightly injured, and 17 or 18 were seriously injured, but there was no death. The life-for-life assault also killed more than 3 teams of the opponent. Seeing this, Lear decisively mobilized the swamp godhood suppressed in the magic seed. Mysterious, dark, and sacred breath surged out, enveloping the body of the swamp poison frog. Waves of life energy were extracted and integrated into the wetland lizardmen beside him. These fierce warriors immediately felt the power in their bodies soaring, deep in the blood. Some dormant, ancient power slowly awakened. The 1.7-meter tall body gradually grew taller, and the already bulging muscles on the body expanded even more. It stopped growing when it reached 1.8 meters, its claws exuded a cold light, as sharp as a knife, and its thick tail waved, making a whirring sound through the air. Its amber eyes were ferocious and violent, its bloody mouth opened slightly, and the sharp thorns like daggers made people feel cold breakthrough. 2-star potential. Wetland lizard man, level, primary knight, level 7, potential, 2 stars, level cap, level 9, racial talent, amphibious life. The lung structure of wetland lizardmen is special, and they can hold their breath for a long time and take short breaths underwater. Skill, hard scale armor, 2 stars, passive, scale armor has steel-like defense, reducing 15% of the damage received. Brutal, 2 stars, when receiving damage or launching an attack, it will enter the brutal state, become extremely brutal, fearless of pain, and fight the enemy to death, and all attributes will be increased by 20%. Equipment, standard armor, 1 star, evaluation. Fierce swamp life, potential has been increased to 2 stars, and the level cap has increased from level 6 to level 9. More importantly, both skills have been increased from 1 star to 2 stars, and the attributes have been significantly improved. Hard scale armor added the feature of 15% damage reduction, brutal added the feature of entering the brutal state and increasing all attributes by 20%, the overall combat effectiveness has skyrocketed. The most intuitive manifestation is Dash, the swamp poison frog, which originally had a slight advantage in one-on-one battles on the battlefield, was instantly overwhelmed by pressure. The situation that was still in a stalemate collapsed directly. The wetland lizard man rushed into the swamp poison frog frantically. The opponent's tongue, which could pierce the body, penetrated the armor at this moment, but was blocked by the scales, unable to break the defense. And with its surging power, it could even cut the swamp poison frog alive with a single swing. Those seriously injured wetland lizard men recovered quickly after their life potential was improved. Coupled with Lear's treatment, they crawled back alive in front of the god of death. Rejoin the battle. The number of swamp poison frogs was gradually compressed and decreased rapidly. This scene was like a chessboard, where the opponent's chess pieces were eaten one by one, but Lear could rely on powerful skills to keep his chess pieces. Hags also killed frantically, killing more than 2 or 3 teams of swamp poison frogs by himself. This wetland lizard man once again showed his power as a hero. After a series of encirclements and suppressions, the overall situation was determined. Although the swamp poison frogs were furious and kept resisting, it was no longer effective. Puffed at the last swamp poison frog was beheaded, and this difficult battle finally came to an end. At this moment, the wetland lizard warriors, covered in blood, stood on the corpses, looking around. There were no more enemies. His temperament was indescribably solemn and cruel. Ordinary people would feel weak in their legs and swallowed by nightmares if they looked at him. Seeing this, Lear's eyes were inexplicably dazed. This was the warrior he had cultivated with 2-star potential and reached level 7. No one could stop them. No. He felt a sense of accomplishment. The only pity was that the broken godhead he controlled could only increase its potential to 2 stars. If he wanted to continue to improve, he had to control the authority first, but where the authority was still unknown. Looking around, he could feel the kindness and joy of the entire swamp towards him. he could also feel that what he needed was in the swamp, but he could not find the entrance and push open the misty door. It seemed that he needed some additional opportunity to trigger that. He calmed down, waved his hand, and gathered the army again. He ignored the corpses and debris all over the ground and looked towards the territory. These wetland lizardmen warriors took turns to go to the battlefield, and the evolution level of the 5 teams of wetland lizardmen stationed in the territory had reached the critical point of 95%. This harvest can also cultivate the remaining 5 teams. Lear smiled a little. This wave of hunting is comfortable. Chapter 43 Red-Spotted Spider. You are listening at novelfull.audio. This area is only 5 kilometers away from the territory. Lear sent 5 teams of wetland lizardmen who were injured and in poor condition to return to replace the guards of the Deuce City. After resting for a whole hour, the army returned to its peak condition. It happened that the 5 teams of wetland lizard warriors in the territory also arrived. Without hesitation, he extracted the life essence from all the gathered swamp poison frog corpses and gave it to these wetland lizard warriors. Potential was immediately boosted. In this way, he has 2 squadrons of potential 2-star, level 7 warriors in his hands. Taking this step will double your combat power. Lear looked at the ferocious warrior in front of him who was 1.8 meters tall and whose muscles bulged out from his armor, and nodded with satisfaction. This wave of hunting yielded good results. If you control the power of the swamp and continue to increase the upper limit of training, you can look forward to 3-star, 4-star, or even 5-star potential in the future. Then dragons can also be hunted. After calming down, he continued to lead the army to search for the smelly giant monster. After walking forward for about 20 minutes, the ground turned into a large grassland with muddy water underneath. As soon as I stepped on it, the grass sunken downwards, and large amounts of mud and water poured out. The grass was tangled with circles of white spider webs. The further we go, the denser the cobwebs become. Until the end, the ground was completely covered with spider webs, and it looked like it was covered with a layer of white gauze. Lear's eyes narrowed slightly. Let the military be more vigilant. Just by looking at it, you knew something was abnormal. In this way, he traveled about 200 meters in the spider web. The wetland lizard man exploring the road ahead suddenly heard a low roar. Discover the enemy. Lear raised his eyebrows slightly. Let the army speed up immediately. During this period of searching, he had developed a sufficient tacit understanding with the army. He already knew the warning roars of the wetland lizardmen when they were attacked, warned, discovered the enemy, retreated, etc. Able to respond immediately, after reaching more than 100 meters, the wetland lizard man exploring the path in front immediately approached and reported. Sir, a large number of red-spotted spiders were found ahead. The number exceeds a squadron. Red-spotted spider. Lear's eyes narrowed slightly, and he immediately followed the other party to investigate. Crossing the muddy grass at their feet, they approached an area covered with vines. Looking around, hundreds of meters around were covered in vines of different sizes, and white, extremely sticky spider webs are spread all over the area. The green vines were all wrapped in spider webs, from root to top, leaving no gaps. It looks like you have arrived in the kingdom of spiders. Inside the spider web, a ferocious spider half as tall as a man with gray-red stripes hangs upside down on the spider web. The 6 arthropods clinging to the web are silent and silent, like statues. You can't even feel the other person's life fluctuations. On the heads of these monsters, a red tumor looks particularly dazzling. Red-spotted spider, level 9, potential, 2 stars. Characteristics: spider toxin can secrete unique spider toxin, which can paralyze the enemy and cause the opponent to lose strength and perception. Skill: spider web trap, 2 stars, create a trap set with spider webs. Anyone who steps into it will be eroded by the poisonous spider silk and lose consciousness. Spider cocoon, 2 stars, weaves a cocoon of spider silk to wrap around the enemy. The silk is as tough as a steel rope, reducing the opponent's strength by 40%. Fast movement, 2 stars, movement speed on spider silk is increased by 60%. Evaluation: poisonous monsters that like to spit out large pieces of spider silk in their own territory. These harmless spider silks are just bait. Don't take it lightly and step into the spider web traps they set. Level 9 wild monster. Lear's eyes narrowed slightly. Looking around, there are already over 100 of them, and they are still on the opponent's home court. judging from their appearance, it's not easy to lure them with the same trick used to deal with swamp poison frogs. There are so many cobwebs, why not try setting them on fire? Lear became interested and was about to arrange a trial. Haggis came closer now. Sir, I didn't expect there to be so many red-spotted spiders here. Lear was a little curious. Why do you say that? Haggis said softly. The poison secreted by red-spotted spiders is very terrible. We often hunt them to smear their blades. But in the area where we lived before, the number was extremely rare and we couldn't touch it for several months. Does it still have this effect? Lear became interested. What are the weaknesses of these spiders? How did you hunt before? Haggis spoke briskly. Red-spotted spiders have very hot tempers because the highly toxic sarcomas on their heads are always irritating their bodies, and they usually rely on secreting spider silk to disperse the venom. There must be a unique kind of weed growing in the place they like to live, which can suppress their toxicity. Once the weed burns and turns into smoke, it can directly detonate the sarcoma on their body surface. Once the sarcoma ruptures, they will be seriously injured and on the verge of death. Catching them at this time is very simple. Spiders want to suppress the venom in their bodies, so they live next to those weeds that suppress them. Lear was amazed. Metaphysical law of cause and effect. There must be an antidote within 7 steps. Go find those weeds. Yes. Haggis immediately led people down to collect weeds, and not long after, he found a large bundle. The leaves are dark green and the roots are slender. It's no different than the weeds on the roadside. Lear opened the properties panel and took a look. The properties were also very simple: curly leaf figwort, level, none, characteristics, can inhibit the venom secreted by red-spotted spiders. It's really a killer of red-spotted spiders. Just use it. However, it is still a pity that this fire cannot be set off. While thinking, he looked around. After a brief observation, I determined that the current upwind was to the east, and waved Haggis's hand to move to the east. Then he took out the flint, poked it a few times and the sparks flickered, igniting the reed fluff he had just collected. The fluff exploded instantly, causing those unremarkable weeds to emit bursts of smoke. The smoke is not thick, but carries a refreshing fragrance, flowing directly with the wind, covering the entire vine area. The red-spotted spiders that were hanging in the web-like statues suddenly twitched, and then let out a shrill roar like a knife scraping the glass, falling violently. Lear saw it clearly. After the smoke rose, the tumor on the head of the red-spotted spider seemed to be squeezed by something, and it exploded. Green venom splashed into the sky. It was like setting off a biochemical version of fireworks. The scene was disgusting and weird. After a series of firecrackers, the aura of the red-spotted spider weakened at a speed visible to the naked eye. The red-spotted spider in the center of the smoke was lying on the mud, twitching all over and foaming at the mouth. The effect is even better than Haggis said. Lear clicked his tongue in surprise. After the situation was under control, he waved the wetland lizardman forward without hesitation. He strode into the spider webs with his webbed feet, and at the same time very skillfully avoided some trap areas with many spider webs. Experienced, looking at the weak and wailing red-spotted spider on the ground, he waved the steel knife. Each head was cut off directly, an efficient killing machine. The red-spotted spider lying on the ground wanted to resist, but couldn't get up despite struggling. In a moment, all the hundreds of level 9 red-spotted spiders were killed. The battle ended quickly. Haggis looked at the corpses everywhere and felt a little emotional. Sir, this swamp is really rich in life. In the swamp before we wandered, it was very difficult to find a red-spotted spider. As he spoke, he became excited again. In the mouths of these monsters, there is a mouthpart that stores venom. It contains the most deadly venom. If it is applied to the weapon, it will still have huge lethality even if it takes 2 or 3 years. Lear smiled happily. He waved the somewhat impatient hero to collect the poison sacks. These swamp creatures skillfully removed fist-sized white venom bags from the spider's mouth. Each one was bulging with venom. The venom bag is as tough as cowhide, and as long as you pinch the opening on it, it will close automatically. Quite peculiar. Some wetland lizardmen directly opened the poison sack, carefully wetted the poison with weeds, and applied it on the steel knife. Some even smeared the venom on the paws of their little fingers. The venom dried quickly, leaving a hint of light blue on it. Seeing this, Lear looked at the poison sac with some curiosity. The next second, its attributes quietly emerged in my mind. Red-spotted spider venom sac, level 1 star, characteristics, can be fed to highly toxic life forms to increase their toxicity. Good guy, these poison sacs are actually 1-star treasures. And its properties are also very interesting, as it can increase the toxicity of highly poisonous organisms, but it's a pity that there is no such life in Welu City. How about catching a beauty snake and raising it in the future? Lear thought about it for a while and felt that it was not bad. After all, it is an extra gain, and the whole process does not cost anything, so don't give it up in vain. Chapter 44 Emergency. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Soon, the wetland lizardmen harvested all the poison sacs and piled the corpses together, tired into a tall spider mountain. Their bellies were turned upside down, and their bodies covered with downy hair were particularly ferocious. Lear's eyes moved slightly. The wetland lizardman warrior has been promoted to 2-star potential, which has reached the upper limit and cannot be promoted further, but the level is still level 7, and the upper limit of 2-star potential is level 9, if potential is. Compared to a container, strength is like the water in the container. When it is filled to a certain extent, it will be full and no more can be filled. The grade is the scale on the bottle that lets people know how much water is in it. If you want to hold more water, you can only expand the container. Now it is no longer possible to expand the container, but you can continue to fill the bottle with water. A thought came to my mind. He mobilized his divine power to convert all the spider corpses into life energy, which poured into the body of the wetland lizard. Man, the aura of these ferocious warriors rose again. An upgrade progress appears after the level, 35%, compared with increasing potential. The life energy required to increase level is obviously much less. Lear felt relieved. Keep searching. During the next 2 hours of exploration, no trace of the owner of the 3-toed footprints was found. Lear suppressed his emotions, compared the magic map, and came to 20 kilometers north of a place where the smelly giant monster may appear. On the 15th, the building occupied by the opponent will be revealed. Take advantage of now to explore the area first. There is a 100-meter wide grassland in this area with obvious marks on it. If you are more careful, you can see the clues above. There are fewer traces of activity on the 4 sides, and the center is the densest. Normally you might not care about this, but with definite information, we can figure out where the smelly giant monster is without much thought. After observing for a moment, Lear suddenly smiled. Know when and where the enemy will appear, and he will not be disturbed in the process. What kind of enemy is this? This is a group of prey waiting to be slaughtered. He looked at the poison sac in the wetland lizard man's hand. Hags, do you know of any other highly toxic poisonous weeds in the swamp? It would be better to use smoke to cause damage. The actions of the wetland lizard man completely opened his mind. If he couldn't fight with hard power, he would use other means to make up for it. Poor information is a natural advantage. The best strategy is to use each other's strengths to attack the other's weaknesses. Haggis said this with great enthusiasm. Master, there are many kinds of poisonous weeds and poisonous insects growing in the swamp. I know no less than 20 species. However, except for red-spotted spiders, I have not tried using poisonous mist to corrode them. Lear nodded. I'll collect some later and go back and try them one by one. There are still a few days left, but it's not too late. Yes. Haggis immediately passed on the news and asked the wetland lizard people to look for poisonous insects and poisonous weeds. There is no life at the location of the smelly giant monster, but from time to time you can see a pile of gnawed bones. This area is their hunting ground. After exploring the terrain clearly, Lear had a clear idea. I took a look at the sky and saw that it was already afternoon. It would be dark even after 20 kilometers of journey back to the territory. Today's harvest is pretty good, so I don't want to stay any longer and go straight back to the territory. Before sunset, when the sunset dyed the clouds red, we stepped into the city of Dew again. The vine fairies are cultivating starry sky vines, while the swamp people are organizing the land. Some people have gathered at the fish farm in the north, and the swamp people who have cultivated farmland in the south have just returned. Everyone is busy. Seeing Lear return, Bane, sweating profusely, immediately walked out of the fishing ground with mud on his feet. Report the progress immediately after saluting. Sir, the fishery has been divided into 4 small fish ponds, and dragon blood red fish are evenly distributed in them. We prepared fodder, meat, earthworms and other fish food and started trying to feed them. But the dragon blood red fish was quite frightened and has not opened its mouth to eat yet. Lear nodded. Very good. Take good care of them. They may become our important specialties in the future. If dragon blood red fish can be cultivated, it will definitely become an inexhaustible gold mine. Bane slapped his chest and said loudly. Sir, don't worry. We will complete the mission. Lear nodded slightly and continued. Have the barbarians done anything today, that I didn't take them with me on today's hunt? Bane shook his head. I dispersed the barbarians into several parts, cultivated farmland, separated fishing grounds, and leveled the land. I also had people secretly monitor me, but I didn't see anything unusual. Lear is very interested in the barbarian territory, but the city of Welu has not developed yet, so it is a bit early to talk about trade. Just put these guys under house arrest for now, but they can't be kept in vain. They are still a strong labor force, so it would be a waste not to let them work. Now is the time when we are short of manpower, and the swamp people are not as strong as these people. Let's talk about being a cow for a few months that he couldn't bear to let them go now. Sir, there are too few manpower now. It would be great if we could capture some slaves. Bane was a little emotional. There is nothing in the territory and everything needs to be constructed and reclaimed. The wetland lizardmen are responsible for guarding security and cannot participate in production. The swamp people are the main labor force, but there are too many things to do in various aspects, and these hundreds of people can't be busy at all. Lear nodded. This does need to be considered, but this requires finding the right candidate, with the magical skill of God's residual power. There is no need to worry about loyalty, but there don't seem to be many lives in the swamp suitable for slavery. He despises a fishy race like the half-murlocs and is not suitable for them. Similar to the mire people and wetland lizard people, they are more in line with the positioning and future development of Welu City. Thinking of this, I also have a headache, a blank territory, lacking everything. I can only pay attention to it later, putting this matter aside for the time being. Lear informed Bane about the smelly giant monster and finally said. Do you know what poisonous things are in the swamp? Having seen all kinds of magic in Lear, the Bogman hero's inner ups and downs are not that big. He didn't find anything strange about why he knew about the ruins and buildings hidden in the void. How could he possibly imagine what the Lord is capable of? He said with some thought. There is no shortage of poisonous things in the swamp. I know of no less than 20 kinds. But using smoke to create poisonous mist requires a try. Sir, when I ask the people below to collect black dragon broadleaf grass, they will also collect those poisonous flowers, plants and insects. Lear said solemnly. If we can set up an ambush in advance, they are all prey waiting to be slaughtered. On the 20th, the smelly monster's building will disappear again. If you want to hunt again, you have to wait until next month. There was always some sense of urgency inside him. The swamp is not safe, and these dangers need to be cleared away as much as possible. The smelly giant monster is too close to the city of Welu. Once it appears, it will definitely find the city of Welu. No one knows what will happen then. Danger must be nipped in the cradle. Yes. After communicating for a while, Bane left. There was a lot going on and he couldn't stop. Lear turned around and came to the central area. At this moment, the vine fairy who gave birth to the baby happily shuttled among the vines, accelerating the growth of the starry sky vines. Weave together these tough plants. Looking from the outside, a group of 7 or 8 meter high buildings are growing upwards full of vitality, with a diameter of 200 meters. You can't feel any difference when it is on flat ground, but now it is beginning to take shape, and it immediately looks majestic. Although according to this progress, it will not be capped until around the 20th, it has already begun to show its impressive results, and this building is alive. The only pity is that the baby born by the vine fairy takes half a year to hatch. Otherwise, if there are 40 or 50 vine fairies working at the same time, the construction speed will be as high as heaven. He was looking forward to this scene. The next day, August 13th, there were still 2 days before the next intelligence update and the appearance of the smelly giant monster. Lear woke up in the morning, washed briefly, and then gathered his troops to go hunting. When the army was gathering, Bane stepped forward with a solemn face, holding a hen's nest on his head. "Good day, my lord." After holding up his chest and saluting, he said in a deep voice. "Last night, one of the swamp people who cleared the farmland did not return." Lear raised his eyebrows slightly. "Have you sent someone to look for it?" "It was getting light this morning, so I sent someone to rush there, but the news just came back. There is still no trace of the other party." Lear's tone softened. "What's the reason?" "Sir, my companions who returned together yesterday said that they heard the swamp people's mating song at sunset." The kid's expression was a bit off at the time, but he was stopped by the elders. When he returned, he fell behind, and when he returned to the territory, he found that he had disappeared. I thought he would come back by himself at night, but there was no movement until late at night. Bane's tone became serious. "Sir, the swamp people's mating songs are not in this season. November is the season for swamp people to breed and court mates. There's clearly something wrong with that." Chapter 45, Changes in the Quagmire. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Lear's voice became solemn. "Any other information?" Bane also had a headache and smiled bitterly. "My lord, there is nothing. Courtship is fine for older swamp people, but for those young and hot-tempered young men, it is simply a huge temptation. Who can withstand this test? But the problem is that there are no swamp people nearby. This matter is wrong from the inside out." Lear nodded. "Restrict the swamp people who are going to reclaim farmland and let them go in groups of 5. Don't let this happen again. You find the swamp people who heard the singing yesterday to lead the way, and I will take people to investigate the situation immediately." "Yes, soon, 2 swamp people came to report carefully." Lear was not vague, and took them and the wetland lizard warriors of Team 15 to set off immediately. Farmland is the foundation of the territory, and anything can go wrong, but not here. There must be no accidents. The food in hand, including the hunting gains, can barely last for half a year. There is no shortage of food and drink in the short term, but it is impossible to have no shortage forever. If the territory wants to expand, the most basic food needs must be guaranteed. The farmland is only 5 kilometers away from the territory, and it takes about 40 minutes to reach it in an emergency. This is a wide irregular mud land with flat terrain. Its diameter exceeds 2 kilometers, and the area of the entire area exceeds 1,000 acres. The ground is fertile and black mud, and you can see that a large area has been regularized. Swamp wheat yields about 600 kilograms per mu and matures in 3 months, and it can grow vigorously regardless of cold or hot weather. It can be planted all year round. Counting any natural disasters and man-made disasters that reduce production in the middle, the 4-season wheat can produce at least 2,000 kilograms, or 2 tons. It is estimated that these thousands of acres can produce 2,000 tons of food at full capacity. 1 ton of swamp wheat is enough for 3 adults to consume for a year. These 2,000 tons can support at least 6,000 people. This is inestimable for the city of Wei Lu. As long as this piece of farmland is reclaimed, there will be no need to worry about food problems for a long time in the future. The biggest advantage of agricultural civilization is that it has a stable food supply. This may seem insignificant, but it is something that many races wandering in the wilderness dare not dream of. Only with stability can we develop on this basis, which is the cornerstone of civilization. At this moment, there are still a dozen mud people in the farmland. When they saw Lear and his party, they immediately stepped forward to salute. "Good day, sir." The tone was full of trepidation. It seemed that he was afraid that Lear would blame him. Lear nodded. "You continue to work, don't worry." After saying that, he looked at the 2 mud people who led the way. "Where is the song I heard yesterday?" The older mud man pointed to the south of the farmland area and said carefully. "Sir, there were 4 or 5 people who heard it in that direction, but Hannah was the only one missing." "Are there any other abnormalities?" "It's not like when we came this morning, and we didn't hear the singing anymore. We went to search this morning. There was only a pool of water in that area through the grass, and we didn't find anything else. We didn't search further away." Lear's eyes were serious. "Hags, be on high alert. Search to the south." "Yes." He looked at the 2 swamp men. You go with the team. He led the team to set off without waiting for the two to respond. The wetland lizardman hero sent out 3 teams, and at the same time the army deployed a defensive formation and advanced to the south. Although this matter seemed small, this was a swamp deep in the wilderness. Any abnormality could hide huge dangers. Lear would never reduce his vigilance because of this. After crossing the muddy land, there was a man-high grass in front. Broadleaf grass, with leaves growing like saws, can easily cut through the skin without clothing protection. This patch of grass stretched for 300 or 400 meters before it reached its end. Pushing aside a clump of tall grass, the view suddenly opened up. Ahead was a 100-meter-wide pool of water. The water was not clear, and it smelled of vegetation and algae. Although it had a slight fishy smell, it was not unpleasant. There were traces of search left by the swamp man around, but other than that, there was nothing unusual. Lear turned his head and looked around, trying to find some clues, but it was quiet all around, with no traces of wild monsters left. The clues seemed to end here. Hags also took 2 steps forward and reported softly. Master, there is no remaining smell around. The lizard man's nose was not as good as that of a hound, but he could also detect the smell of prey. But here, there was nothing but the smell of grass and muddy water. Lear frowned slightly. If the swamp man was lured farther away, the search would be more difficult. After calming down, his mental power extended out, covering the surrounding area of 200 to 300 meters. The next moment, he suddenly looked down at the calm water pool in front of him. His eyes were fixed. The surroundings were not different, but when his mental power extended to the underwater, it was like exploring the abyss, and there was no movement at all. There is something wrong with this water pool. He waved his hand and led the army away from the shore. At the same time, he looked at hags. In the swamp, what kind of life lives underwater and can sing? Hags thought for a moment and said in a deep voice, Master, there are many life forms that use singing to lure prey. There are no less than 20 kinds of life forms, including bloody nightingales, seducers, screaming ghosts, wetland succubi, and swamp banshees. Half of these live in the water. Lear's eyes flashed with a dangerous light. You return to the territory immediately and bring the bubble beasts. Live in the water. Sorry, the bubble beasts don't care whether you are underwater or not. These little guys specialize in your things that swim in the water. Hags took the order and left. Soon, a group of bubbles flew over the grass and entered Lear's sight. These transparent bubbles floated in the air, and you could see the chubby bubble beasts inside. These cute things that looked like little dinosaurs kept waving their hands and babbling when they saw him. Lear's eyes lit up. Is this possible? Somewhat tempted, he would let these little guys take him for a ride when he returned. You guys are done playing, it's my turn. Flying in bubbles is too early for kids, but it's just right for me. The wetland lizardmen warriors around were also amazed. Although I saw the scene of the bubble beast using bubbles to carry fish back yesterday, but it's still quite eye-catching to put itself in a bubble and fly here. Flying, this is the dream of all life on the surface. The bubble beast fell to the ground, and the transparent bubbles broke one by one. These little guys came to Lear trotting under the leadership of the leader Bobo. Master, the voices cried out sweetly. It was like kindergarten children meeting their parents after school. Lear felt better when he saw these magical little cuties. He stretched out his hand to point to the turbid pool in front of him. Unknown monsters are hidden under the water. We can't go deep into it. We need your help. Hearing this, the little guys suddenly became excited. Master, let me do it. I like to fish. I got here first. Master. Looking at the noisy scene, Lear didn't know whether to laugh or cry, waved his hand. Let's do it together. But be careful, don't go into the water. Bobo, you supervise the execution. Bobo nodded. Yes, Master. He glanced at his companions. Don't cause trouble for the Master. The other bubble beasts were a little afraid of Bobo, and they didn't dare to make a noise. They immediately moved closer to the shore and started blowing bubbles. Seeing this, Lear asked hags to take the wetland lizard warriors to protect these little guys. They formed an unbreakable formation in front of them. The steel knife was tightly grasped, and the armor was shiny. Once there was any abnormal movement under the water, they had to pass this level. The bubble beast spit out small bubbles, and the bubbles grew against the wind and expanded to a diameter of 3 meters. Plop. Plop! It fell into the water like a rolling stone and disappeared. Although there are only 8 bubble beasts this time, each of them can control 30 bubbles, so the total is 240. It is really exaggerated. The number of bubbles entering the water gradually increases, and the water begins to become turbid. At the moment of reaching a certain critical point, Lear's eyes condensed. He looked at the center. The magic energy there became unusually active. Someone is casting a spell. Chapter 46 3-Star Magical Life, Swamp Banshee. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Retreat 30 meters further. The monster in the pool is moving. The wetland lizard warrior was invigorated and immediately protected the bubble beast and retreated. They stopped when they were 60 to 70 meters away. The farthest distance of the bubble controlled by the bubble beast was about 200 meters. At this moment, it was still under control. Splash! Suddenly, the calm of the water surface was broken by a group of swimming fish. The fish tail rolled up circles of ripples and splashed a large area of water. You can see the bubbles constantly catching. These fish, the next moment after the splash, a melodious humming slowly floated from the water surface. At this moment, Lear was a little dazed. It was like returning to the time when he was a child, dozing in the warm embrace of his mother, being watched by loving eyes, the kind figure holding him, slowly rocking in the room, gently patting his back, the dazzling white light, the yellow ceiling, the peeling wall. Everything seemed to have returned to the past, but the next moment when this feeling appeared, Lear suddenly woke up, and his eyes suddenly became sharp. He looked at the lake again, his face full of murderous intent. How dare you be so unscrupulous in front of him? He turned his head and looked around, and found that the lizardmen were all confused at the moment. Some of them were still full of happiness, and a few were walking forward. Such a strong ability to lure, no wonder the swamp man disappeared. Wake up! He shouted angrily, and at the same time mobilized the swamp godhood in the magic vortex. The magnificent majesty surged out and directly covered the wetland lizardmen. How could the divine power be compared with ordinary monsters? The confusion in everyone's eyes suddenly dissipated, and they subconsciously looked around, and only then woke up from a dream. Then his face became extremely ugly. Damn it! He actually made them embarrassed in front of them. The master was watching on the side. However, the bubble beast was not affected, as if those songs did not exist at all. These little cute guys continued to control their bubbles, stirring them in the pool. Sensing that the wetland lizard warriors had escaped the temptation, the melodious singing from all around became more and more obvious, but the divine power exuded by Lear was an insurmountable mountain. No matter how powerful the temptation was, it could not resist the majesty of the gods. At this moment, there was a rustling sound in the grass behind him. Lear turned his head and saw that more than a dozen swamp people were blurry-eyed at this moment, like zombies, approaching with stiff steps. He raised his eyebrows. The divine power surged, isolating the outside world. Those swamp people suddenly woke up, and when they saw the scene at this moment and heard the singing in their ears, they were immediately trembling. Some timid legs softened and sat directly on the ground. It was close, it was close. There was no adult around, and they were almost pulled into the water. Lear ignored these guys and continued to look at the pool. Keep searching. They can't run away. The bubble beast immediately started to babble and began to increase the input of magic power, controlling the bubbles to search more fiercely. After being caught by the bubbles, the big fish were thrown directly onto the shore to avoid disturbing the operation. A large number of fish swimming on the shore flapped their tails, and their bodies were covered with grass and mud. The bubbles pulled up a huge net in the water, searching deep into the mud without dead ends. Soon, these bubbles gradually shrank, surrounding all the life in the water in a small corner. Several bubbles suddenly broke, and huge bubbles emerged on the water surface. Bobo was instantly excited. Master, we found them. The bubble beasts around controlled the bubbles to surge down at the same time, covering that area of water, but the bubbles that approached kept breaking, and bubbles like boiling water emerged. The more bubbles broke, the more energy the bubble beast could draw out, and the magic power was concentrated on the fewer bubbles. The toughness of those bubbles soared significantly. Finally, after the number of bubbles that broke reached a certain limit, no more bubbles broke. Halala! The last remaining bubbles all surged up, then it floated up to the air like a fishing boat. Lear looked intently. 3 very special figures appeared in the bubbles. The long light blue hair of those swamp creatures floated in the water. Their appearance was like that of a 17 or 18-year-old young girl. with an excellent appearance and almost no flaws. The black eyes were like the starry sky, mysterious and seductive. The bare legs were as white as jade, clean and white under the light. The clothes woven from waterweed covered the important parts of the body, giving people a primitive and peculiar beauty. The figure was well proportioned, and it could definitely be called top-notch. Is this the monster in the water? Lear was amazed. When he looked closely, his attribute panel appeared in his mind. Swamp Siren, level 3, magical life, potential, 3 stars, level cap, level 12, magic power, 1000, racial talent, 1, melodious voice, has a unique voice and can sing songs that penetrate the soul, 2. Emotional food, stimulates the emotions of outsiders through singing, uses emotions as food, and can increase its own strength by devouring emotions. Skills, debauched music, 1 star, the singing can make people hear the voice they want to hear most and see the most impressive picture in the depths of their souls. Tempting voice, 1 star, when the singing sounds, it can confuse perception and make people indulge in the singing. Evaluation, soul singers in the swamp, they have power comparable to that of sirens. This is actually a magical life with 3-star potential, and it has 2 racial talents. It's a bit exaggerated. After reading it as a whole, Lear was amazed. If these wetland banshees were put on Earth, wouldn't the big rocket of the top brother on the list be smoking? And he has directly experienced the other party's ability. Even he, who has a godhood, was in a trance for a moment, and others were almost obsessed with it. Level 3 can have such a great influence. What if it is the maximum level 12? And what's interesting is that these lives actually use emotions as food, and can eat emotions to increase their own strength. It's amazing. In the bubbles filled with water, the swamp banshee with algae green hair kept holding the bubbles with both hands, trying to break out. The milky white and shiny skin is particularly eye-catching in the clear water filtered out of the muddy water by the bubbles. That tender face looks pitiful, like an innocent, simple, and unworldly girl. Not only the voice can deceive people, but also the appearance. At this moment, the intelligence system in the mind triggered new intelligence again. You have captured a very unique life in the swamp banshee, and you have obtained an additional piece of information. The singing of the swamp banshee can soothe the restlessness in your heart, and allow you to better control the power of the swamp. You can enslave them with the godhead, and sing for you when you merge the power. Lear's eyes flashed. Swamp banshees actually have this characteristic. When I was in Lauren City, I refreshed an important piece of information. The power of the swamp will appear within half a year. Now, it has been a month, and there are still 5 months before the power will appear. The richer the foundation accumulated in these few months, the more relaxed it will be to control the power. This swamp banshee came at the right time. Put the swamp banshee in front of me. The bubble beast obeyed the order and controlled the bubble to fall in front of him. The 3-meter diameter bubble was filled with filtered water. The swamp banshee was in it, flapping her arms and legs pitifully, trying to escape from the cage. However, the bubble beast was at level 8, and had an absolute crushing advantage in strength. No matter how hard the other party struggled, it could not shake the thin bubbles. Lear felt particularly happy when he saw this scene. Swamp banshee, you are very strong, but now, you are mine. Chapter 47 Special Intelligence. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The swamp banshee in the bubble was immediately excited when she saw Lear being protected by the wetland lizardman. She kept slapping the bubbles. The sound penetrated the bubbles, with a little dullness and the unique sound of the water. Let us humans go. We are willing to give you the treasures we have collected in exchange for our lives. Human strongmen, we also know the information of an ancient relic. Respected sir, we have no ill will towards you. At first, her tone was fierce, but seeing that he was indifferent, she gradually softened and finally turned into a plea. Lear's eyes were still calm, ignoring these banshees and mobilizing the seeds of magic power. The swamp godhead slowly glowed. An unspeakable magnificent power directly enveloped the 3 bubbles in front. The swamp banshee only felt her heart beating wildly, and in a trance. It seemed that she saw the great gods born from ancient times, staring at them. The soul was trembling. But in a flash, she woke up. In great fear, they suddenly opened their mouths and let out a piercing scream, but the bubbles sealed their magic power, and they could no longer mobilize their own power. they no longer had the ability to seduce people as before. The divine power rolled and pressed down, the swamp banshees could only bear it all, the terrifying majesty penetrated into their souls, they could not resist at all. The swamp banshees whose power was sealed suddenly went crazy, constantly slapping the bubbles and creating whirlpools, but no matter how they struggled, it was useless. The absolute pressure forcibly penetrated their souls, and with unreasonable strength, it left a mark on them. Slavery was completed, the madly struggling swamp banshees trembled, and their violent posture slowed down instantly. Looking at Lear's eyes, they were stunned at first, and then gradually became soft and close. There was no longer any hostility before. Lear smiled happily. He looked at the cute bubble beast beside him with great appreciation. These little guys are really the most important treasures he has harvested in this period of time. Bubble prison, 2 stars. Imprisoning the enemy in a bubble can make the opponent's body limp and powerless, unable to mobilize the power in the body. Bubble Beast's imprisonment skills are a perfect match with his divine power. The divine power can conquer the swamp life, but the premise is that the opponent cannot escape. In a good state, using divine power to subdue the opponent will easily make the opponent fall into rage, but the bubble makes up for this defect very well. Even if the opponent wants to retaliate, there are bubbles to lock them. These little guys are really his treasures. Bobo, let them out. Bubble Beast heard the order and did not hesitate. The magic power was mobilized, and the bubble burst directly with a sound of boo. The water rushed out and flowed back to the lower-lying pool. 3 swamp banshees stood lightly on the ground, with long light blue hair draped behind their heads, like a roll of water grass. Miraculously, their bodies were not soaked by water and still looked dry. The green algae-woven clothes were wrapped from the chest to the thighs. The snow-white, slender, and tender long legs reflected the sun. The face was delicate and small, and the skin was as tender as that of a girl of 17 or 18 years old. Putting aside the algae clothes on their bodies, these swamp banshees were no different from humans. Their soft and weak appearance could make people have a strong desire to protect them. At this moment, Lear could feel that the fear in the eyes of the swamp people disappeared, and instead a little sympathy rose. They are indeed banshees, magical creatures that feed on emotions. They said nothing, did nothing, and just stood here, which could make people let down their guard. The 3 banshees came forward softly, knelt on their knees, and lowered their heads. They saluted Lear in the most humble manner. Master. At the moment when the soul was branded, all hostility turned into respect and worship. This is the power of the gods, extraordinary power. Lear took a deep look at these banshees. Get up. When the 3 swamp banshees with long light blue hair stood up, they asked. Did you use your singing to seduce a swamp man yesterday? The swamp banshee in the middle whispered. Master, it was not us who actively seduce him. Instead, he came to us on his own. Yesterday, we just broke out of our shells and sang towards the sunset. A swamp man sneaked close to our habitat. If we took the initiative to seduce him, there wouldn't be only this one swamp man. Hearing this, the swamp men around him suddenly felt ashamed to see people. What kind of thing did their companions do? They didn't seduce them yet, but you came to us on your own. Of course, they themselves were not much better. Lear was quite curious. Break out of the shell. Are you born by laying eggs and hatching? The swamp banshee nodded. Yes, master, when our mother reaches adulthood, she will lay eggs in the muddy pond for gestation. During this process, the shell of the egg will turn into hard rock, and the gestation process will last for 20 years. After the gestation is over, we will be born. After breaking the shell, we have entered adulthood. At the same time, the knowledge inheritance left in the blood will be awakened. What a magical life! According to you, there are treasures and information about ancient ruins. The swamp banshee said repeatedly. I did not deceive the master. Deep in the mud, there is a treasure left to us by our mother. We heard about that ancient relic from a half-fish who was attracted by the singing last night. Lear became more interested. He pointed to the person on his left. Pick up the treasure in the pool. He looked at the swamp banshee in the middle. Tell me, where is the relic? The swamp banshee who was called immediately responded, walked to the pool with bare white feet, and immersed herself in the water step by step. The turbid muddy water gradually covered her snow-white body, there is a kind of beauty that defile holiness, the other party disappeared from sight, these are originally creatures living in the water. Like swimming fish, the water is their home. Another swamp banshee spoke about the news of the relic. The merman who was lured here by the singing last night told us that his people had found an ancient ruin and were preparing to open it, but he didn't know the details. Where is that merman? Like the swamp man, we placed him in the grass on the other side. Did you find out where the ancient ruins are? Lear was very interested in this information, the swamp banshee said slowly. The specific location of the ruins is 20 kilometers south of. Those mermen only found the location of the ruins, but have not yet found a way to open it. This area is 5 kilometers away from the city of Weir, which is 25 kilometers south of the city of Weir. He had a rough idea in his mind. In which direction is the gathering place of the mermen? In the west, 6 or 7 kilometers away. How many are there? More than 600 people, led by a level 10 merman hero. Level 10 merman hero. This key information made Lear's eyes slightly fixed. This is very important. The combat power of the hero unit is not comparable to that of ordinary life. The number of 6 squadrons is also a difficult point. Any other information? No, we didn't interrogate too much. Lear nodded, or asked the half-fish man in person. After a moment, the swamp banshee who had dived into the water floated to the surface again and stepped onto the shore step by step. What is surprising is that after leaving the water, there is still no water on her body, very dry. Is this also a racial talent? The swamp banshee strode forward and handed over a fist-sized snail shell with both hands. Master, this is a treasure left to us by our mother. Chapter 48, Unlimited Potential, Future Spiritual Development Depends on You. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Lear reached out and took it curiously. The treasure, which looked like a snail shell, was as light as a feather in the hand. Echo shell, level, 2 stars, characteristics, 1, the echo echoes, amplifying one's own voice, centered on itself, so that it can be heard within a radius of 3 kilometers, 2. Charming voice, using the shell to transmit sound, increasing the sound effect by an additional 40%, evaluation, a treasure made from the shell of an echo snail can greatly increase the charm of a person's voice, 2-star treasure. What a good thing, but this was clearly made specifically for the swamp banshee. Lear stretched out his hand and handed it back to the other party. Keep it yourselves, don't lose it, it will shine brightly in your hands. The swamp banshee who took the echo shell looked at him quite moved. Master, thank you for your gift. Lear's mouth twitched. This is your stuff. These newly born swamp banshees seem a bit easy to deceive. He continued to look at these banshees. They use emotions as food to increase their power. Very strange, and isn't this better than eating what grows in the ground? With this voice and this charm, I will teach them to sing a few songs when I go back, and arrange and rehearse dances such as the pendulum clock and dress dance, or put on a few plays like Romeo and Juliet to fill the spiritual void in the city of twilight, without being emotionally harvested in full. In the Noel world, spiritual life is extremely poor. The most fun is to go to the pub or visit Louising in the evening. The upper class can also hold open parties and have some fun, but they can't do without those things. People of the lower class have trouble even eating and drinking. They don't care about any spiritual entertainment at all and can only be immersed in the world of black and white. As for songs, only the major sects have hymns to praise the gods. Not entertaining at all. Territory construction is important, but spiritual construction is also important. In the future, you can let the swamp banshee promote the greatness of the Lord and sing songs such as "The City of Dew is my home" to increase cohesion and unity. If you think about it carefully, there is great potential to expand in this direction. In terms of combat, it can confuse the enemy's mind and increase your own chances of winning. In terms of life, it can be used as a public opinion machine to promote his ideas and will. The territory is too small to see much effect. In the future, the public opinion and spiritual guidance of Weilus City will become extremely important. After thinking about this, when Lear looked at the swamp banshee again, his eyes had completely changed. These succubi with outstanding appearance can be used in endless ways as long as they are properly explored, not necessarily worse than Bubblemon and Vine Fairy. This crisis was not only safely overcome, but also turned into huge profits. Comfortable, at this moment, Haggis led people to pick up the missing Mire man and the half-murloc in the grass. The two of them were still asleep at the moment. The clothes on the swamp man's body had already been stripped clean, leaving only a pair of large pants on. It didn't matter to the half-murlocs. These slime-covered beings were covered in algae and were in tatters, no better than no clothes at all. The Mire people around him were ashamed to see their companions in such a mess. Fortunately, this time, the adults conquered these banshees with thunderous means, otherwise this guy would really be dead. At the same time, I was also a little scared. Fortunately, they were not seduced by the singing yesterday. Otherwise, it would be their turn to be lying on the ground and being stared at by hundreds of people to see the effect. Lear waved his hand and asked someone to wake up the Mire man. Hanno, wake up, wake up. The swamp man who came forward to wake him up couldn't wake up for a long time. Then he gritted his teeth and slapped him with a few big mouths. After the pain, the other party slowly woke up. This swamp man named Hanno is very young, about 16 or 17 years old. At this age, it is not strange to be tempted. The other party slowly turned his head, his green pupils showing a bit of confusion, and then gradually woke up, feeling a bit chilly on my body. I sat up suddenly, looked at my big pants, and was startled. No clothes. Glancing around with his peripheral vision, he found hundreds of people staring at him with big eyes and small eyes. A strong sense of shame came over me, and I almost wanted to find a hole in the ground to burrow into, trembling to the side. What happened? The Mire man who woke him was angry and funny, and told him all this, finally saying, "If the Lord hadn't personally led the army here, you would have died in the grass." Was he actually seduced by the banshees singing? The young swamp people felt more socially dead than ever before. He was deceived, but now, hundreds of people rescued him and showed him naked for them to see, and the culprits who seduced her are still there, and they are still so beautiful. Under the huge blow, his body became trembling. Lear frowned slightly as he looked at the bog man's appearance, waved to get the other person to stand up. "What's your name?" "Hanno." Ashamed, the Mire man lowered his head and murmured, "Yes, Lord, my name is Hanno." No one would want to appear in such a state in front of the great Lord whom he regarded as a god. Might as well let him die. Lear looked at him with a calm expression, reached out and patted his shoulder, and said slowly, "Lift your head and look at me." Hanno's body trembled. Was the Lord going to blame him? Thinking that hundreds of people were still watching, the shame in his heart became more and more intense. He clenched his fists and raised his head, prepared to bear the blame, but the scolding he expected did not come. The Lord's tone was still calm and serious. "Hanno, no one will not make mistakes. If young people make mistakes, God will forgive them. Only after knowing the shame can you move forward more bravely and firmly in the future. Don't let yourself stop because of this mistake, or even become depressed and discouraged. I allow you to have the opportunity to make mistakes. Growth and success take time. Work hard. There is still a long way to go in the future. The city of Wei Lu needs you to take on the heavy responsibility." Then he patted his shoulder heavily. "Don't show this look in the future. I don't like to see it. Failure is not terrible. What is terrible is not willing to accept your own weakness and choose to escape. Go back." Hanno looked at Lear blankly with a grey look in his eyes, and the grey world in his heart lit up with an unprecedented light. His eyes gradually brightened until they were bright, his right hand was on his chest, and his eyes were full of determination. "Lord, Hanno, I will live up to your expectations. Young people make mistakes, and God will forgive them. The future of Wei Lu's city will still need young people like them to take on important tasks." These words are like a shot of cardiotonic, which is injected into the heart. Looking at Lear, his eyes are no longer the respect he had before, but full of fanaticism and piety. He is looking at his own God. The eyes of the swamp people around him have also changed. They no longer have strange views on Hanno, and their respect for Lear has reached a new level. Being able to follow such a leader, even if it means death, is also willing. The reason why the saying respecting the wise and humble is so widely spread is that the status of the superiors and the inferiors is extremely unequal. Even if the superiors only treat others with an equal attitude, in the eyes of the inferiors, it is a great honor and gift. Chapter 49, News about the Ruins. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After waving his hand to let all the swamp people leave, the sleeping half-merman was thrown in front of Hags. Lear looked at the half-merman, who was sticky and smelly, and turned to look at the swamp banshee beside him. Wake him up and ask him questions. The swamp banshee immediately nodded in response, humming softly. The elegant voice made people feel comfortable physically and mentally. The unconscious half-merman slowly woke up. He stared at the swamp banshee with a greedy look on his face. He ignored the fierce eyes of the surrounding warriors, as if there was only the swamp banshee around. Master, I have bewitched its soul. You can ask directly if you have any questions. The soft and crisp voice of the swamp banshee was like tickling people's hearts, which sounded very comfortable. Lear nodded and stared at the half-merman. How strong are your companions? The half-merman said stupidly. The levels are all level 5. The chieftain obtained a magic crystal in the ruins, and the level was raised to level 10. Magic crystal. Lear thought of the process of Hag's transformation into a hero. This is a good thing. His interest was raised a little. Have you opened the ruins? No, the chieftain said that this was obtained by the great father god outside the ruins. The voice of the half-fish man was stiff and a little dull. Father god. The god of half-fish man? Yes. The god of half-fish man has fallen millions of years ago. Can you still hear his guidance? The father god has never fallen, but has fallen into a deep sleep. The father god has been guiding us all the time. That the face showed the unique piety of believers. Lear raised his eyebrows slightly. The fanaticism of believers has always been like this. But this also needs extra attention, lest the legendary thing of God's resurrection really happens. In this fantasy world, anything can happen. After asking a few more questions, the context gradually became clear. A few days ago, the fishman suddenly discovered an ancient ruin. Although he has not found a way to enter yet, he has also gained a lot of benefits outside. This fishman is of low status and has been on guard outside. He does not know more specific information. After getting the key information he wanted, Lear casually mentioned it. Are there any other dangerous things around here? The fishman's face was a little resentful. 20 kilometers away from us, there is a group of dark Nagas. Those lowly lives have always wanted to enslave us. Dark Nagas? Lear was a little surprised. This was another additional information. The number of those dark Nagas is enough for 2 squadrons, and the level has reached level 9. We originally had thousands of people. But last month, the dark Nagas attacked us. More than half of us were killed or injured. After saying that, he muttered unwillingly. When my god returns again and the great fishman rises, we must enslave all those damn dark Nagas. Lear continued to interrogate the news about the dark Nagas in depth, but he did not get any valuable information. The other party just muttered about revenge, wanting the merman god to bring down divine punishment, etc. While thinking, he waved his hand to the lizardmen and asked them to take it back for further interrogation. So far, the episode caused by the disappearance of the swamp man has come to an end. This sudden incident has brought him a lot of gains. The swamp banshee with beautiful singing voice and the main force of the spiritual civilization construction of the future Wei-Lu city, although it is just a newborn. Its potential has reached 3 stars, and the upper limit of the level is 12. Moreover, the other party feeds on emotions and does not need to be fed. Judging from the encounter just now, the other party still has great potential to be tapped. Secondly, the information about the merman gathering place and ancient ruins in the south was known. Finally, the information about the Dark Naga was obtained. All in all, it was a small profit. Lear, who was in a good mood, did not stay in this pool for too long, and returned directly to the territory with the swamp banshee, informed Bane of the reason for the disappearance of the swamp man. Bane heard the news and looked at the beautiful and gorgeous swamp banshees. His face was also a little exciting. Looking at Hanno, who returned with the team, he was not polite and criticized him harshly. There is nothing to say about the young people's unstable minds and being seduced, but the people who should be lost cannot escape. After the young swamp people left, Bane glanced at the swamp banshees and hesitated. My lord, how should they be settled? Lear smiled. The rise of a city cannot satisfy the residents with only material life. I heard that in the capital of the elves, you can hear the wonderful singing of the elves every day. Since the elves can do it, why can't my city of Wei-Lu? That he looked at Bane meaningfully. Swamp banshees are not just used for singing. In the future, they will also be the main force of singing, praising and chanting the city of Wei-Lu. It will even be a flag of our territory. According to his idea, these swamp banshees may become a trump card of the city of Wei-Lu. Of course, how to develop in the future still needs careful operation. The territory is just starting out, and everything needs to be done slowly. Bane's face showed some thoughtfulness, but there is no native of the fantasy world baptized by modern information to explore the deep meaning. I just felt vaguely that I had grasped something, but I couldn't figure it out. Can the swamp banshee represent the city of Wispy Dew and become a banner? There were some doubts in my heart, but they were suppressed in an instant. It didn't matter if he couldn't figure it out. The key was that this matter was proposed by the adults. He only needed to absolutely execute the adults' will. The adults' vision was far from what he could match. After the communication, Bane left with thoughts. As the construction of the territory gradually got on track, there were more and more government affairs, and he was too busy all day long. But just after walking a short distance, a thin young figure appeared in sight. The other party's lips were pale and looked a little weak. Hanno. Bane sighed. Are you okay? The young swamp man shook his head, staring at him with algae-green pupils, and said seriously. Lord Bane, I'm fine. I came to you to know how to repay the Lord. This made Bane a little funny. Want to repay the adults? Try to grow up. You are not even a hero now. Why do you think so much? They, the swamp people, are too small in this land full of dangers. As a hero, he dared not say how he could help the adults. He patted the other's shoulder and planned to leave. Lord Bane, how can you become a hero? Bane looked at the slightly thin swamp boy and smiled. That requires a lot of hardship. Halfway through, looking at the other's serious eyes, his tone was a bit complicated. This process took me 10 years. Although the tone was calm, it was very sad. It is not so simple to become a hero. No one knows what he has paid to take this step. Outsiders may not care. Ordinary swamp people want to stand out. If they don't have enough talent, background, and family background, they must have the determination to fight to the death. If you are not cruel to yourself, why should you stand out? Bane's eyes are dim. Go back. You can't bear the hardship. He turned and left. He couldn't even resist the temptation of the Banshee. How could he complete these difficult exercises with such a weak will? But the next moment, plop, the thin boy knelt on one knee, his eyes showing unshakable determination. Lord Bane, the Lord saved me. Only by becoming a hero can I give the Lord greater help. I hope to be a hero. I am ready. He said word by word. Even if I sacrifice my life for this. Bane turned back suddenly. The boy kneeling on the ground was like a weed destroyed by the wind. It was already dilapidated, but it was still stubbornly rooted in the earth. After watching in silence for a long time, Bane turned around again. The boy's heart trembled when he saw this. Watching the other person's figure gradually disappear, the light in his eyes did not dissipate, but became brighter and hotter. If no one helps me, then I will help myself. I will not stop here, never. Chapter 50, Killing God. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After resting for a moment, Lear walked out of the tent, looked at the dazzling sun, and took a deep breath. The further he explored, the more pressure he felt from all around him. The enemies that have been identified so far include the smelly giant monster and the two-headed ogre. There are more than 500 rotten centaurs 30 kilometers away to the north, and the level has reached level 9, hidden dangers. Unknown giant three-toed footprints, a surprising glimpse of a flying dragon, now another. Half Murloc gathering place and a dark Naga have been discovered. Although the level of the wetland lizardman has been upgraded to level 7, and the strength in his hands has improved a lot, it is still far from being able to push across the swamp. He needs to continue to strengthen the strength of these warriors while enslaving more troops in foreign campaigns. The swamp banshee, bubble beast, and vine fairy all explore and conquer the outside world, although they all have strategic Significance: they are still different from frontal assault armies like the wetland lizard warriors. Lear thought for a while, and summoned the swamp banshees to accompany the army. These banshees can be exploited now, their singing is perfect for attracting monsters, safe and efficient. After thinking about it, I brought 8 more bubble beasts, since we plan to enslave more swamp life. These cute little guys are the best helpers. The bubble prison they create is a perfect match with the skill of God's remaining power. After the army gathered, they set off directly. The gathering place of the half-murlocs is 25 kilometers south of Wailus City, and it will take a while to get there, cross the farmland area and enter the unexplored area to the south of. After another 4 or 5 kilometers, the vegetation in the swamp in front of us was extremely lush. Large tracts of weeds with slender canes clung to the silt, and loose silt accumulated beneath the grass. From time to time, half of the yellowed bones can be seen exposed from under the grass. Buzz. The sound of mosquitoes could be heard in the ears, which combined with the stuffy hot environment made people feel a little annoyed, stepping on the muddy ground. The wetland lizard man's webbed feet spread slightly to increase the contact area as much as possible. Even in soft mud, these swamp lifeforms can walk easily. Lear is different from them. Magic power wraps around his body, making him as light as a feather. He can even step on water plants and move forward. In the swamp, his magic recovery speed is more than 10 times that of the outside world, allowing him to maintain it for a long time. Ah! Suddenly, a shrill scream brought the army to a halt. Lear turned around to look, and saw a wetland lizard man falling in the mud, covering his feet and rolling back and forth with a twisted expression. The wails of pain were particularly penetrating. His body was shaking uncontrollably, and he even buried his head in the mud without consciousness. Haggis stepped forward quickly with an ugly expression, held the opponent down and took a look, then raised his head and said, "Master, it was bitten by the black-spotted red bloodworm." Lear frowned. "Poisonous insect?" Haggis's eyes were serious. "Yes, Lord, we are not immune to the pain caused by red bloodworms. These venomous insects are highly venomous and like to occupy large areas as hunting grounds. I'm afraid this place is already covered with red bloodworms. They live in the mud underground. Once there is a big movement on the surface, they will retreat underground. Their holes can even go hundreds of meters underground, making them extremely difficult to deal with. The dragon's excrement has bottomed out, and it is impossible to carry it with you all the time when going hunting. Without the deterrence of the dragon, poisonous insects in the swamp may appear at any time." The 2 wetland lizard men lifted their injured companion over. Lear looked down and saw an exaggerated swelling in the gap in the leg armor. The scales were bulging, and blood could be seen seeping out from the gaps. Bounty of the swamp, magic power surged, and a healing spell made the wetland lizard man's pain subside slightly, and the expression on his face relaxed. "Come closer to me." After the words fell, the remaining power of the gods radiated out. You can faintly feel that the insects hidden under the short grass and mud are quietly escaping deep underground. "How do these poisonous insects compare to swamp spiders?" Haggis shook his head. "Although the venom of swamp spiders is strong, it is still not as poisonous as the black-spotted red bloodworms. It is said that these poisonous insects are mutated by devouring the flesh and blood of giant dragons. Although the level is not high, they are extremely poisonous. How come any life can be related to a giant dragon?" Lear's mouth twitched. He looked down at the ground, thoughtfully. It seems a pity to let such a poisonous insect go. While thinking, he turned to look at the swamp banshee beside him. "Can you lure out these poisonous insects hiding underground?" The swamp banshee nodded immediately. "Master, let's try." Although they have the inheritance of wisdom, they have just hatched and have far less experience. They are not sure whether the singing will be effective on insects. The 3 swamp banshees slightly opened their red lips, and their white teeth set off each other. The next moment, a melodious and soft singing voice came from the mouth. It felt like a pair of warm hands massaging the soul to Lear. The whole person was soaked in the warm water and felt comfortable. Rustling, the grass shook. Lear clearly sensed that in the underground soil, lives exuding unique aura began to climb upward. In a moment, a few meters ahead, a thumb-thick, 20 centimeters long, dark red worm covered with black spots crawled out of the mud onto the short grass on the surface. Looking around, there were thousands of them densely packed in this area. Just one look was enough to make one's scalp numb. Hagsa's face changed. Fortunately, they didn't go too deep. If they all crawled out, half of them would have died here. Black-spotted red bloodworm, level 3, potential, 1 star, racial talent, highly toxic, can produce soul poison in the body, cannot be immune. After poisoning, the soul will gradually fester. Skill, poison sac, 1 star, can store up to half of the body weight of venom. Evaluation, a poisonous insect with terrible toxins. It is indeed a poisonous insect, both the talent and the skill are highly toxic. Although the level is not high, the attached toxin is not simple. Lear's eyes were delighted. Let these black-spotted red bloodworms gather here. Bring them back to the territory. Finding poisonous insects and poisonous plants is also one of the goals of exploration. The smelly giant monsters that occupied the ancient ruins are waiting to be enjoyed. The swamp banshee is worthy of being a life with 3-star potential. Her singing is melodious and those insects seem to have found some sweet food and rush over quickly. Lear saw a plant as wide as a banana leaf on the side, and asked the wetland lizardman to pick a few leaves and put them in front of him. The black-spotted red bloodworms immediately climbed up by themselves. Thousands of insects crawled densely, which looked disgusting. After the insects were not missed, the bubble beast spit out bubbles and collected them all. Although these black-spotted red bloodworms are disgusting, they are also deadly means if used well. At least, the smelly giant monsters are very suitable for these little things. Lear's mood improved a little. Let the army continue to move forward. After this incident, everyone's vigilance was raised again. During this period, they encountered a lot of poisonous mosquitoes, but they were not as valuable as the black-spotted red bloodworms. When there were less than 5 kilometers left to the gathering place of the half-merfolk, the wetland lizardmen who were exploring in front sent back information. A half-merfolk sentry was found in front. Lear immediately perked up. And the fatigue caused by several hours of rushing was swept away. Finally, the main show began. In order to prevent accidents, he waved his hand and asked Haggis to go there in person and take down the sentry. The wetland lizardman hero responded in a low voice and immediately disappeared from sight. When he arrived in front, Haggis had 2 more half-merfolk captives with bruised skin and swollen faces in his hands. These guys covered in mucus exuded a disgusting stench, which looked quite disgusting. Lear turned his head and looked at the swamp banshee with light blue long hair beside him. Needless to say, the other party immediately stepped forward, her red lips slightly opened, and the beautiful singing was lingering and melodious. Several terrified merfolk instantly lost their minds and showed silly expressions, watching the swamp banshee laughing foolishly. The saliva dripped from the corners of their mouths. Seeing this, Lear couldn't help but take a closer look at the swamp banshee. These 3-star potential magical lives are really more useful the more they are used. It's a pity that there are only 3 of them, and it takes 20 years to breed them, so it's too late to give birth now. How many people are there in your territory now? Where is your chief? Everyone is in the territory, and the chief is leading the tribe to worship the father god. Worship? Lear raised his eyebrows. The merfolk captives captured in the morning also said the same thing. Are these guys so pious? They worship every few days. The merfolk spoke in a fanatical tone. The great father god will be revived, and the merfolk will eventually rise. Everyone will submit to the father god. This swamp will belong to the merfolk, and the entire wilderness will also be ruled by us. That the piety of the believers is worthless, and the other party's almost crazy tone made Lear frown slightly. When he was about to continue the interrogation, the intelligence system in his mind suddenly refreshed new information. You have heard the information about the revival of the merfolk god, and additionally triggered related intelligence after the merfolk god fell 1,000,000 years ago. Only a wisp of residual soul remained sleeping, and it was not until last month that he woke up. The merfolk of the slime clan happened to be nearby. These merfolk were once again shrouded by the eyes of their father god and began to fight for the merfolk god. The residual soul of the merfolk god contains a unique divinity, and the gods cannot be killed by ordinary means. But the swamp godhood can erase the other party's residual soul. Lear saw the prompt of the intelligence system, and his breathing suddenly condensed. I just felt dry mouth and a surge of hot blood rushed into my mind from my back. The merman's words about the awakening of the father god turned out to be true. The merman god who had fallen for 1,000,000 years was resurrected. The most important thing is that he can wipe out the other party's residual soul. A word that made everyone in the Norplane tremble suddenly appeared in my mind: God-killing. The whole person's blood was boiling. P.S. There are more than 2 million words of fine novels. Global Lord, starting to become a desert lord is more exciting. Everyone who likes lord novels can try it.